gosh!
So what is food waste? To get from the farm and to your plate, our food has to go through a lengthy process, a process called the food production chain. The food production chain is something a lot of us don't think about when we look at our plates. A lot of us consume without much awareness. The food production chain begins at the farm, where a farmer grows the food and harvests it. From the farm, the food is sold to someone where it then goes to a processing and distribution plant. Here, different foods go through different processes depending on whatever product they're trying to make at that specific processing plant. After processing and distribution, food ends up at either a retail location like a grocery store to be bought by you, or it goes to a restaurant to be cooked and sold to you. Throughout this process, a lot of food gets thrown away and is not consumed by anyone. Food waste is that very food that's thrown away along this food supply chain. Food waste could be accidental or intentional. If food is spilled during harvest or transport or goes bad in storage, that is food waste. If food rots in the market and is trashed, that is food waste. If a restaurant throws away the rest of the food that was not purchased or eaten, that is food waste. If we buy more food from the market than needed and let them rot in our homes instead of donating them, that is food waste. Or if we go to a restaurant and fill our plates, eat a little, and throw the rest away, that is food waste. Food is wasted at the farm, the processing and distribution plants, in retail and restaurants, and in our daily personal lives. The average U.S. family of four wastes about 1,000 pounds of food a year, or $1,500 a year. As a nation, up to 40% of our entire food supply goes uneaten. So, why is so much food going to waste? During the next part of this video, we'll closely inspect how each step of the food chain, from farm to the processing and distribution plants, to retail and restaurants, and to us, the consumers, play a role in the wasting of food. We will start by closely examining the farm, taking a closer look at what leads to food waste here, and what is being done to alleviate it. Food loss in the farms falls into two categories, the first being food that is grown and never harvested. Market fluctuations often lead to unharvested food when the cost of transportation and labor is higher than the price of the crop. Imperfect produce caused by damage of pests or weather often also goes unharvested because of the demand. Buyers won't buy them if they know consumers won't buy them. Other times, things go unharvested due to labor shortages caused by immigration laws or farms not making enough to pay for workers. The second category is food between harvest and sale. People's preferences for perfect food lead to food waste because cosmetic imperfections cause harvested food to be rejected by buyers, leaving many farmers with this unwanted product. Lack of storage space, like lack of refrigeration for example, also leads to food waste. Since certain farmers take into account uncertain weather and damage from pests, they often plant more than what buyers demand, leading them to have a surplus in food. This surplus is often wasted as well. Solutions for food waste in the farms are for farmers to farm smarter by planting their crops to prevent overproduction, studying the market using tools to track harvest to estimate which product is worth growing, cleaning and disinfecting storage spaces and having adequate ventilation, or using a gleaning network to collect produce missed by workers, and lastly, recycling unwanted food for animal feed.
Current projects that are working to eliminate food waste on farms are Society of St. Andrew, an organization which has volunteers collecting the unpicked produce and donates it to food banks. Spare Fruit, which is a company that creates air-dried fruit crisps from discarded produce from small farms. And finally, Imperfect Produce is an organization which collects ugly food and creates customized boxes specific to customer needs. Now that we've examined food waste on the farm, let's examine food waste in the processing plant and distribution area. Food waste in processing plants is due to separation of desired from undesired byproduct. For example, when tomato sauce is made, tomatoes are skinned and that skin is discarded. Food waste will vary depending on the plant's end product. Examples of liquid waste are fats and oils whey from cheese and yogurt. Potato processing waste water, and examples of solid waste are apple pomace, inedible dough, soybean curd residues, and the list goes on. During distribution, the main culprit for food waste is improper storage, such as bad refrigeration and pest infestations in shipping containers. Solutions for food waste and processing and distribution plants are turning biodegradable fractions of food processing waste into useful products, such as turning tomato byproducts into lacquer for canned packaging. Not only does this prevent food waste, it also offers economic and environmental benefits. Some projects currently working on food waste from processing plants are the Baldur's Bronx facility, who believes in using every single part of a produce. The scraps are sold to a buyer, which uses it as an edible ingredient. For example, the carrot peels are sold to a juice shop. The Waste Management Inc. turns food waste into biogas. It collects food scraps and grinds them into a slurry, which is mixed with sewage, and its mixture is processed in an anaerobic digester, resulting in biogas that can be burned as fuel. Next, we will be examining food waste in retail.
The top reasons for food waste at the retail level are 1. Imperfect produce. Produce that is thrown away because it doesn't look good enough to be stocked or because consumers don't buy it. And 2. Expiration dates like sell by or best by that are misunderstood by consumers, leaving grocers with a lot of quote unquote expired products that they will eventually throw away. So grocery stores also just throw away food because it is getting close to sell by date and people won't buy it anyway. Solutions from the grocery level are sending rejected orders somewhere other than the landfill, pushing for standardized food labels so consumers aren't confused into thinking food is expired. Walmart is a giant retail chain that is already putting this into practice. Stores can also be encouraged to report more data on food waste in hopes that this awareness on how big the problem is will bring forth the want to fix it. Grocers can also recycle food and repurpose it into meals, which is already practiced by retail stores like Whole Foods. And finally, grocers can donate food or simply compost it. Solutions at the consumer level are buying food even if it is close to the sell by date, or understanding that this sell by date expresses the food's highest peak of freshness and not its expiration. Consumers can also buy imperfect produce, doing things as simple as being willing to buy the bananas with the little brown spots. Current projects working on decreasing food waste at the retail level include projects like The Daily Table, which is a nonprofit grocery store that collects food from other grocers that is close to its sell by date and sells it at a heavily discounted price. Another is City Harvest, who collects food from grocers and delivers it to food pantries and soup kitchens with the aim to reduce hunger in New York. And finally, we have Hungry Harvest, an organization that delivers boxes of rescued, ugly produce that can't be sold in retail locations and delivers these boxes to homes in Maryland, Northern Virginia, and more. Now that we've looked at food waste in retail, let's look at food waste in restaurants. The biggest reason food waste happens in restaurants is because restaurants refrain from donating food even when they are protected by laws like the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act. Restaurant businesses are hesitant due to fear of being sued, even with laws to protect them. 84.3% of food in American restaurants gets thrown away. 14.3% is recycled via compost or using it for animal feed, and only a tiny 1.4% is donated. Now that being woke and aware is trendy, restaurants are working on conducting food waste audits to try to reflect a sense of waste efficiency. These audits analyze pre consumer waste, post consumer waste, and disposables. Let's break this down further. Pre consumer waste is food that doesn't leave the kitchen. Solutions for this would be evaluating inventory, keeping stock organized, finding ways to reuse ingredients, training staff to reduce waste, and offering staff meals. Next, we have post consumer waste, food that's purchased by a consumer but not eaten. Solutions to this would be monitoring portion size, tracking popularity of each dish, and encouraging customers to take their food home. Finally, we have disposables. These are things like paper goods, plastic utensils, and packaging. Solutions for this would be using compostable products and recycling. Some projects that are focused in reducing food waste at this level of the supply chain include projects like Copia, a smartphone app used to facilitate donations and deliveries of excess food in cities across the Bay Area. Those with food to donate post their information via the app, and the driver will come pick it up. Someone looking for food can also post a request online and wait for a match, kind of like Tinder but for food. Another example is Community Plates, which works to end food insecurity by transferring fresh food that would otherwise be thrown away by restaurants to food insecure families. And finally, we have DC Central Kitchen, based in Washington, D.C., which delivers meals to homeless shelters, transitional homes, and nonprofit organizations. Their food recycling program allows them to turn leftovers and surplus food into nutritious meals for those in need. And finally, the last culprit to the contribution of food waste: us, the average consumer. There are many reasons that lead to food waste at home. For starters, we buy more than what we need, or we buy food that we usually don't eat. Another cause is that some people don't know what these expiration dates mean and throw away products that are past the sell by date or best by date but that are still good. Improper storage is another reason food gets easily spoiled and then thrown away. And the most common reason: we are too picky with our food, quick to throw away any ugly food. There are many things we can do to reduce our food waste at home. Doing things like shopping smarter. This includes making a list before you go to a grocery store, planning your meals, and only buying what you really need until your next shopping trip. We can also store food better. We can store and freeze food properly, doing things like not storing veggies in plastic, wrapping cheese in wax paper and not plastic, or separating produce appropriately. We can also store food strategically, placing things that spoil more quickly where you can see them so you don't forget they are there, placing cut up fruit or vegetables in see through containers at eye level, keeping our refrigerators clean and uncluttered, and placing older food before new ones. Other solutions include eating leftovers, embracing ugly produce, and learning what product expiration labels mean, and donating or composting food waste. Despite the many band-aids established to alleviate food waste remains a very, very huge problem that needs to be taken more seriously. Food waste is very problematic. It has negative environmental impacts that lead to political issues and have negative health impacts as well. And we can't forget that while a lot of the world is starving, we are here throwing most of our food away. So every time you go throw away food, you aren't just contributing to issues with landfills. The food waste is the largest component sent to landfills. We have to remember that getting food to any point on the supply chain exerted a lot of natural resources, such as a huge amount of water used to grow it, or how its journey to you added to fuel emissions during transportation. All these resources exerted for essentially nothing since it got thrown away. So no, we aren't just adding to landfills and dumps when we throw away our food. We're also forgetting to acknowledge that it took a lot out of our environment for the food to get to us, that then impacts our well being as well as the well being of our planet. Lastly, we'd like to mention that there are efforts close to home that are being made to help with the issues. Besides this class that brings up the conversation, we have projects like the Food Pantry, who took on alleviating food waste when trying to alleviate food insecurity. And we have the Berkeley Food Collective, an org also aiming to fight battles against food insecurity and food waste. But even these efforts have work to be done, as food waste happens here too, due to things like food not always being culturally appropriate or people not knowing how to cook certain food. All in all, food waste is a real problem, but with the increasing awareness and great efforts to fight against food waste, we can get a little closer to wasting less and less food.
Thank you. Next, thank you.
We're just kidding. We're not throwing it away.